This is a really fascinating story. According to The Telegraph, the United States are considering granting asylum to Europeans who've been persecuted by their own governments for their political beliefs or whatever. And naturally, that would apply to Brits as well. People who've got controversial opinions about, I don't know, immigration or religion or whatever, could claim asylum in America. Isn't that fascinating? And look, say what you will about America, they've done a much better job than we have of protecting individual liberties, which honestly is quite sad because England is the birthplace of those liberties, and now you're just seeing them get eroded over and over and over again.
All of the American immigration system would also give preference to English speakers as well as white South Africans, actually. The US president has been advised to prioritise those who have been targeted for peaceful expression of views online. Is it time for Brits who are anti-mass migration, anti-Labour, to go and seek refuge in President Trump's America?
I think we've got a duty to stay here in this country and fight for it. We've got a duty to do that for our ancestors and for our children. I mean, think about what our ancestors did to build this country from nothing into what it became. And then think about the other ancestors who died to defend that, passing it along to us. We are merely custodians of this country, meant to pass it from one generation to the next and look after it and preserve it for them. And I get it. We've been betrayed by a political class. So have those ancestors and so have our children. But there is nothing that's been done to this country that we cannot reverse, nothing that we cannot fix, nothing that we cannot make right. The English spirit still lives here in this land. I absolutely guarantee you that. So I can't bring myself to leave this country, to give up on it like it's nothing, because it's not nothing. It is everything. It's England. I mean, look at it. It's England. Does that mean I can't conceive of any possible reason to leave? No, actually, because I've had some thoughts about doing this myself. Leaving, but not permanently, just temporarily. Why? To stop paying tax to the British state. The British state is not Britain. It is not the nation. It is not England, Wales or Scotland. It is a parasite that is leeching your capital and in return destroying the nation that it is supposed to represent. Okay? Don't trust the government, right? And at the same time, I have a real sort of moral struggle with the fact that I am paying taxes in this country and allowing them to keep doing it. They are destroying my country against my will, and I am paying for the privilege. So one reason that I have thought about leaving for 1, 2, 3, 4 years is to simply stop paying taxes to Keir Starmer, to Rachel Reeves, but even to the Tories before, right? I don't want to pay money in taxes unless I think it's going to be improving this country. I don't want to pay to destroy it. Let me just add one quick caveat to that last point. If you think that your life is, somehow threatened or in danger by being in this country, then sure, you should probably be thinking about getting out. And this really only applies to a very, very small number of people. And it's not even because of political persecution per se, because the government isn't going around trying to randomly assassinate people it disagrees with yet, as far as I can tell. But really, it's kind of like religious persecution. And we've seen this a couple of times. The Batley Grammar School incident, I'm pretty sure the teacher showed an image of Muhammad or something like that. And he's been in hiding for 6 years because there are mobs of people who want to do him harm. And then there was the kid, I think it was in Yorkshire, who dropped a copy of the Quran on the floor and it got a little bit scuffed. And his mother had to go and beg the local community not to do him harm as well. And so sure, there are probably some specific examples where people do feel like they have a target on their back, not necessarily because of the government, but for other reasons. And in that case, you might want to consider applying for asylum in America or elsewhere, right? You just want to live a peaceful life. You didn't really ask for that. Sure, right, I get it. Difficult. Let's think about this from the American perspective for a second as well, because I know I do have an American audience, thanks to Asmongold. What should you be thinking and feeling about this? Well, look, in reality, I don't think the intention is that particularly large numbers of people take this up. In reality, this is probably going to be 10 or 20 or 30 of the most persecuted people in Europe who then decide that perhaps they would do better with an American passport. However, let's consider that this could be some kind of conspiracy, right? To flood America with Europeans. Mass immigration from Europe. Okay, is that a bad thing? You will have to decide that as Americans. But if you take the perspective that America does need some kind of immigration, I think sort of conservative leaning, conservative thinking, English speaking Europeans are probably the best place that you could bring 2 or 3 million people from into America, right? Because they're from the same stock, the same sort of founding stock as modern America. Look, it's not for me as an English person, as a European, to tell you how you should be feeling about your country. I also don't think that that is the plan here, to just sort of like bypass and get rid of visas and flood America with Europeans. I don't think that's the plan at all. I think, as I said, the very realistic option here is that America is trying to assert some kind of values and soft power, but really in quite a forceful way. They're saying to these European countries, look, we value freedom of speech. We actually learnt that from you, and now you seem to be going back on it. You know, we see case after case after case after case of people being thrown in prison for tweets or whatever. Not even for like a week, right? We're talking about years. And so they're saying to these these separate European governments, either you look after those rights, either you provide us a buffer against Russia and China in terms of having a Western democracy outside of America, or we're just going to enforce it for you, right? And think how embarrassing it would be as well to these governments if like 30 citizens from Britain claimed asylum in America over speech issues and they were actually granted it. I mean, that's humiliating. So I think they're projecting soft values in quite a hard way. And look, it's in line with America's value system. Is that going to harm America in any way? Taking like 50 people or something from Europe? No, of course it's not. Let me add one more point about America and immigration. I think America has a bit of a problem with people moving there and then becoming American citizens, but not really, right? They still prioritize their home nations, their ethnic homelands, which I think is to an extent understandable, but what they're not doing is putting America first as citizens of America. And that's kind of problematic. It shouldn't really be like that. And let's just be honest about some examples here, okay? Israel's a big one. You've got a lot of people who go from Israel to America back and forth, but they're endlessly lobbying and shilling for Israeli interests. And a lot of those people would quite happily do something that promoted Israel at the behest or at the cost of America. And that's not good. Like, that's not the kind of citizen you want to be giving passports to. Is that all Israelis? No. At the same time, and it's because it's not just Israel, right? Take like Somalia. You've got people like, I'm pretty sure Ilhan Omar is from Somalia, right? If I've got that wrong, that's going to be pretty embarrassing. But you see these politicians, they're meant to be representing Americans and putting American interests first, but they're endlessly going to these like community meetings of people from their own ethnic homelands, speaking their own languages and things like that. And I think that's a real problem. Like, because you have, and we have that problem here in Britain as well, because you have people coming into the country, but you have this liberty and these freedoms and these, like, you have the right to associate with other people and everything. You kind of can't control it. And then you start finding that you've got these like ethnic groups forming everywhere. So that's a big problem. And why do I say all of this? I say it because I think if I moved to America, I would have a really hard time just totally switching off and forgetting about England, right? So even in the worst case scenario where I had to claim asylum in America, could I just forget about England, you know, my homeland? So look, I'm not even saying I blame those people for doing what they're doing. I think it's inevitable to a certain extent, but when you start bringing really large numbers of people, that's when it becomes problematic, because yes, they still remember their homeland. Yes, they still want to stick together. The same as I would if 500,000 people fled from England to America. I'd probably want to live alongside them, and we'd probably form our own communities and our own towns. And that's not good, okay? I've seen how that works here in Britain. We've got all kinds of ethnic enclaves. So look, it's just food for thought, right? Where am I going with that? I don't know, really. It's a bit of a rambling video. You're just getting my thoughts as they spill out of my brain. Probably the least prepared I've ever been for a video. I guess my point is this: I would find it really hard to take an American passport in good faith and become a fully American citizen and America first, and whatever happens in England, nothing to do with me. You know, I'd really struggle to do that. So it would take a lot for me to be pushed out of this land, to be forced out of this country. I mean, of course, there are circumstances in which I'd do it. If Zach Polanski of the Green Party wins and he starts rounding up right-wing political commentators and sending them to the gulag somewhere out in the Outer Hebrides, sure, I'm probably going to leave the country, right? But I don't know, it's England, man. I don't see how you could consider yourself patriotic and nationalistic and the first sign of a little bit of trouble, a little bit of political persecution, you just flee the country. That just doesn't make any sense to me, right? So yeah, I won't be going anywhere. I'll leave that there, I think. Thank you very much for watching. Please do leave a like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for being here, especially if you're still here. If you've listened to me for the last 6 minutes, just talking to a camera, talking to myself, yeah, you're a bit of a legend. Or you're as much of a loser as me. Either way, thanks very much. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in a future one.